Colorado's Democratic primary for governor is slightly less crowded this week following Ed Perlmutter's surprising exit from the race. Considered a strong candidate, Perlmutter stated Tuesday he wasn't sure that he had, quote, the fuel in the tank to campaign statewide and serve in Congress. He also said that he will not run for re-election in the 7th CD since so many others have already stated their intention to run. Patty, this one caught me by surprise, although I was a little cynical a couple weeks ago when we were looking at this grand battle royale in the Democratic gubernatorial race. We had Jared Polis and Ed Perlmutter, Michael Johnston and Kerry Kennedy, among others. It was just going to be great. Pay-per-view. It never really turns out that way, but Ed Perlmutter dropping out was not the one I probably had my money on. What did you think?
Well, last week we were talking about the 2 clown cars and how crowded they were getting, and now one person has opted out of the Democratic clown car, but already people are angling to also get in. It was surprising, and I think the first surprise, probably for Ed Perlmutter, was how well Michael Johnston did by getting out front, by raising money fast. But Ed Perlmutter obviously thought he was going to be able to still make an impact and still do well. But his announcement didn't really collect. I think the fuel in the tank he's talking about is not so much energy, but the promise of money. It wasn't coming in, and once Jared Polis gets in the race, Jared Polis can fund himself. So money made a big difference in the Perlmutter campaign. The biggest surprise was not just that he was getting out of the governor's race, but that he is leaving Congress. He's not running again. He's been a good congressman. He could have run in that district for a long time, represented it well, and I think they're going to miss him.
David, Patty brings up a good point about not running the 7th CD anymore. We had talked about, even though on paper the 7th CD is very competitive, Perlmutter had attained this status where the Republicans were not going to run anybody competitive against them, or at least spend a lot of money. They don't want to besmirch potential Republican opponents. Now that's done. We have really one of the more significant politicians totally out of the game at this point. Your thoughts?
Yes, and if Perlmutter is going to step down and wants to be succeeded by a Democrat, 2018 is probably a good year to do it because there's typically a backlash against whatever party holds the presidency in the first off-year election. He first won his first race in Colorado that he won, other than for student body president back at CU Law School, was for the Central Jefferson County State Senate seat. That was a seat that had not gone Democrat since the Lyndon Johnson landslide over Barry Goldwater back in 1964. And he won it, and he retained it, and then he became Senate Majority Leader, and then, of course, went on to win a district that on paper, by voter registration, is very competitive. And in all those races, he ran as a very energetic, fierce, tough candidate. And my guess is that's the standard he set for himself. And as he looked at the governor's race, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to have a general election that's going to go from, say, August to November, and really just have to be working every single second for that several-month period. But now he was, as Patty was saying, it's not just that. Now it's going to be, instead of a marathon, it's going to be an ultra triathlon of the race for the Democratic primary. And maybe said he's just not into getting up at 6 o'clock every morning and then falling asleep at midnight and doing it again and again and again for 400 days in a row.
Penn, I've considered both Ed Perlmutter and Mike Hoffman 2 of the hardest working campaigners we've seen in Colorado in a long time. To see him not have enough fuel in the tank, I take him at his word, but do you think there's other factors at play?
Well, I think there may well be. I think Patty raises a good point. A number of people were surprised that Michael Johnston raised so much money so quickly, and so that may have had an impact. Jared's entry into the race with a candidate who can self-fund puts more pressure on you to raise money. The real surprise in this whole thing to me was not Ed's dropping out, but the fact that he ran in the first place. You are right. I think he and Mike Hoffman are probably 2 of the more aggressive and consistent campaigners in the state. I think Ed's personality was sort of a perfect fit for the congressional seat. He's a real people person. He's outgoing. I mean, I've seen him in airports just grabbing people and saying hello, and I've caught him in airports. He really enjoyed that. And being a congressman is more contact with people. Sometimes the governor sits in an office and directs which direction state government goes, and that might have driven Ed a little bit crazy. But you know, the real surprise is that he got in the first place, and now that he's leaving under these circumstances. But one other thing to watch is I'm not convinced the field is set on either side of the aisle. We just had another Republican announce that he was running, basically standing for all of the things that Donald Trump stands for. I'm not convinced he's the last R we'll see get in the race, and I'm not convinced that there aren't other Democrats who'll get in the race also.
Ben, let's talk about the race. What do you think the impact will be now that perhaps maybe not a front runner, but a significant player in the Democratic primary is now out?
Well, I agree, not necessarily a front runner, but one of the leaders of the pack, one of the most established political, personalities in the state and really the whole region. I agree with Penn that we're going to see other people get in. I respectfully disagree with the other people on the panel talking about Mike Johnston. I don't think there was actually that much surprise about it. Most of that money came from out of state. There's not a lot of belief that he's going to be able to sustain that. I think that the fact that there are Democrats looking to get in really speaks to people underestimating Jared Polis. It happened the first time he ran for Congress, and a lot of people thought that Joan Fitzgerald, another really well-established, very tough, very successful politician who raised a lot of money, got beat pretty badly by someone who did not spend 1 second worrying about money. And I think we're going to see a rehash of that in the Democratic primary. And I think, frankly, Republicans are going to have a hard time competing with that, because unless they go on the offensive regarding some of his personality traits or otherwise, they're going to have a very difficult time taking down this highly successful entrepreneur who's just going to be able to continually write checks to himself to the point that it's going to be exhausting for the competition.